Hello. This interview is part of the series publicizing the 2023 conference of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. The conference is called CSICon, and it'll take place in Las Vegas from October 26th through the 29th. If you're watching this video soon after it's published, that's just a month or so away. Today, my guest is Mentalist Dustin, who will be giving a talk at this year's conference. Thanks for being here with me today, Dustin.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So let's start with your talk that will be in just about a month at CSICon. It's titled The Modern Age of Psychics and Social Media. You're scheduled for Saturday at 9:30 in the morning, and here is its official description. With an average of 95 minutes per day spent by each user on social media apps, I'm surprised that's all it is, by the way, such as TikTok.
I know, right?
Social media has become the new TV. Psychics have found an easy way to reach and influence millions of people, including the young and impressionable, with their self-proclaimed abilities. Fame and fortune can be found by charlatans more easily than ever before in this new age. Hashtags such as telekinesis, witch talk, psychic mediums are on the rise with millions of views for each. But about 3 years ago, Dean started to battle these with Debunk talk. Dean uses his experience as a mentalist and a magician to not only challenge these claims, but to replicate and expose how these abilities are easily faked. Wow. So do you want to tease anything more about your talk besides what's given there?
So yeah, I would love to. My talk will definitely showcase kind of the progress that I've made kind of debunking these psychics on social media and what that has looked like and what that has been like. Because over the course of these couple of years, 3 years, things have definitely changed. And, it started off, I would say, it wasn't as big as it is now. Like things, like I mentioned, hashtag witch talk, which like wasn't that big, but now it started to grow immensely. And what that is essentially, it's just a community of witchcraft believers, practicers, users, which I've always said, I've never really judged people for their beliefs, right, and their practices. Like that's fine if you want to do that, but a lot of what a lot of people started doing is on hashtag witch talk is they started to use just like simple magic tricks and illusions, and then they would use the hashtag witch talk and they would start to claim that these were genuine, witchcraft abilities.
So they're presenting something, they're showing, and you understand they're doing a magic trick, but they're not saying it's a magic trick. They're saying it's actually supernatural.
Correct. And they're saying that this is, this is a power that they have, and because they practice witchcraft. And like, for example, there was one I did where a girl was known as the Candle Girl on TikTok, and she was blowing up on witch talk because she was taking like candles and would start a flame on the candle, and they would just slowly start and ignite, which I was impressed by, because even looking back at magic methods that I'm familiar with, it wasn't a method that I've known that was ever written down. I knew she was doing something, but I didn't know quite what. So that's definitely something I'm going to be talking about in the talk.
When I ever watch something magic on, and I have been to quite a few magic shows by people, including David Copperfield and Doug Henning. But when I'm watching something that's recorded, I always just think I can't explain that, then I just think it's a video edit. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like how do you exclude that watching something that's recorded?
Yeah, that's a tough thing, and especially for magicians in today's day and age. It's something that we almost never do. Magicians almost never use video editing. There is like a couple of exceptions, like Zach King, who isn't technically a magician, but he calls himself a magician, and he only does video editing. He doesn't do any sleight of hand or anything. But a lot of magicians, it's very difficult now because we want things to look really impressive, and we want them, especially for camera, like it can look so flashy, but then it's almost like, the more visual it is, the cleaner it is, then people are just gonna be like, oh, that's editing and that's that. So It is a difficult thing to try and avoid.
So I guess my point is, when it's not somebody, portraying themselves as somebody putting on entertainment, it's somebody you're talking about who's proclaiming psychic abilities. Why would the people watching it not think it's just a video edit? Like, I don't know why they would believe it.
I think my belief and throughout doing this in the years as being a professional mentalist, what I do is I go on stage and I replicate what psychics do. But every show I do, I explain to the audience that what I'm doing is not real powers. I have no gifts. I have no special abilities. They're all real techniques that I use to create the illusion of mind reading. And that always, when I say something like that, or I portray myself as that, it offers people to be more skeptical somehow. Like it really, they see it as like a challenge. Instead of me, if I were to go up there and be like, I'm a psychic, I have this ability and this gift, it almost invites these people who just don't want to think skeptically about it. They're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're a psychic. I understand. So it's like, it's almost the opposite. When I try to tell people that I'm not, they're skeptical of it. Sometimes what's really funny is the more I tell people I'm not a psychic and I do these shows, the more people will say, oh, that's just a cover. No, you really are a psychic. You have a gift. And it happens quite often. Sometimes I'll have psychics come to my shows and they'll be like, you just don't understand. You have this gift. You have this ability. Yeah,
I have heard that. I went to Penn and Teller show, and those two guys stand outside after the show and talk to people as long as people want to talk to them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We had an appointment. I couldn't hang out, but I have heard that often at those things. I interviewed Penn last year because he was one of the speakers at CSICon. By the way, right. Teller's up tomorrow, so that.
Oh, nice.
So Penn told me that, yeah, often people will come and like you just said, they would insist that he has magic, that they both have magic powers, and it's not a trick. You need to tell me how you did that. It's like astounding to me. They're hearing from the horse's mouth, no, it was a deception. I'm not going to tell you how I did it, but it was a deception, and they don't want to believe it. What is with that?
It's kind of insane. And I think it really stems from maybe like conspiracy theorists, and because they love to think that like what they're being told is not the truth and it's the opposite. So I think a lot of people, when they're stuck in their beliefs, they're like, he's just saying that because if he were to actually come out with these abilities, the government would be after him and he would be taken away or something. I get that a lot, but it is very funny. It's like I constantly tell people that what I'm doing is not legit. It's not real. And some of them just refuse to believe that.
So regarding what I read that's on the site, it says your experience as a mentalist and magician are in you. So which of those two talents come into play more in what you're doing with the debunking?
Mentalism. So mentalists and magicians, they're essentially the same exact thing. The only difference is that a mentalist, instead of focusing purely on sleight of hand and like visual tricks, we just focus on what I call sleight of mind, or just kind of doing cerebral mind reading illusions, predictions, things that have to do with like having someone think of something and then guessing what it is. That's kind of the difference. So instead of doing visual stuff, we do the mind stuff. But the same exact thing. It's literally illusions, magic tricks. Sometimes it is sleight of hand, but we make it seem like it's not. So that's kind of the difference. And for me, I brand myself as both a magician and a mentalist, but mentalist comes first. That's like, I don't do visual magic tricks. I don't make things vanish or saw people in half or anything like that. Everything I do is the mentalism side of things. A lot of mentalists, they always start being like sleight of hand magicians in their career. Same exact thing with me. I started as just like doing card tricks and close-up magic before moving on, because something about the mentalism, the psychology and all that kind of things, like it just I gravitated towards that more than, I guess it comes from doing magic. You learn how to fool people. You learn what misdirects someone. So you are getting inside people's heads, but you're not thinking about it as much. So then there's just something interesting learning more about that when you get into mentalism. Then you take it like a step further.
Hey, so is this true? Sometimes I've heard, maybe I actually remember seeing this at the Penn and Teller show, where they sort of tell you how they did the trick, but it's not really how they did the trick. It's like what you expected them to say, but it's really the solution is actually different.
1000%. And in mentalism, that's probably even more prevalent, because a lot of big mentalists, like Darren Brown is a big influence on me. He's a mentalist in the UK. His whole thing was trying to convince people that he was just using psychology, or that he was just using NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, to kind of influence people to think things. And the reality is, it's not it's not that. He's using magic methods and other methods, but making it seem like he's using just psychology. So there is something in that where, like, mentalists and magicians, sometimes we like to use, it's obviously all presentational, but we use like other ideas, like this is how we're getting it. Realistically, the real reason is because what we're actually doing is not that impressive at all. Like if we told you straight out, like, this is how we're doing it, it'd be like, oh, well, that's dumb. So the presentation kind of has to be something that people really grab onto.
So do you know what brought you to the attention of the folks who organized the speakers list at CSICon? Maybe one of your 530,000 plus TikTok followers, or what happened there?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so when I started debunking things on TikTok, someone tagged Kenny Biddle in one of my videos about, because I think it was more, I mostly focus on psychics and telekinesis and like witch talk kind of stuff on my page. But sometimes like people tag me in paranormal stuff, and because I also don't believe in the paranormal, so I sometimes debunk those. And I did a video where I debunked that, and someone tagged Kenny Biddle. And so then I looked at Kenny Biddle's page, and we kind of connected that way. And, I looked at what he was doing, he looked at what I was doing, and I loved what he did. He loved what I did. And we just started talking, and we started collaborating sometimes on some videos. And from there, it kind of, he kind of introduced me into the Center for Inquiry, and I guess that kind of snowballed into this. So.
Yeah, it always comes down to Kenny Bill. Were you a guest on his live streamed show? Have you been?
Yes. Yeah. A couple times. Yes. Yeah. It's always a lot of fun.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to put the link in the write up for this to that.
Sure.
That'd be interesting for people. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So do you use a mix of social media, or I've mostly heard you refer to as like a TikToker? Do you use other things? Do you use?
Yeah, I do use a mix of things. What happened is I've been a professional magician and mentalist for about 10 years, that I've been doing gigs and shows and traveling and all that. And I never really paid a ton of attention to social media. I used Facebook for my business and like Instagram, but they weren't like viral or anything like that. But during COVID, obviously I couldn't go around and do live shows anymore. I did virtual, and that was interesting. I don't like it as much as I did live stuff, but obviously I couldn't really go and do things in person. So I, looked at TikTok and I was like, oh, well, this seems to be, blowing up. So I was like, maybe I'll just make some stuff. And I started off doing just like visual magic tricks, like we just talked about, like doing like kind of where people would be like, oh, that's just video editing or whatever, but we would start doing, I would do visual magic tricks because I thought that's what needed to be done. Like with TikTok, I thought that's all, as a magician, that's all I could do. I couldn't even do the mind reading stuff because I'm obviously not interacting with people. But it wasn't until I've always been passionate about debunking psychic powers. And I think that comes inherently from being a mentalist and a magician, because what happens is, as a mentalist, we learn all these secrets. We learn how to fool people. And we see how easy it is to fool people, anybody, not just, people with low IQs or things like that. Like, you can fool anyone. David Blaine fooled, scientists on his show. And throughout the years, scientists have been fooled by magic tricks, because it's things that are obviously, they're kept secret, they're kept guarded, and not everyone has the answer to everything.
And also people don't want to think they're being tricked, right? So, and especially scientists deal with data generally, like Project Alpha with Banachek.
Yes.
Steve Shaw, I believe his name was back then, right?
Yep.
Yeah, totally fooled the people, and they made an announcement. We have proved telekinesis is true. It's like, yeah, no, you were fooled.
It's the greatest thing. I think that was one of the greatest projects ever done, because James Randi really wanted to prove that anyone can be fooled. This is why we need magicians and mentalists to kind of look over these things. Whenever these things happen where someone's like, oh, I'm using a psychic ability to bend metal, like a magician or a mentalist, we know how these things are done. We think a little bit differently because we've learned how to fool people. So once you learn that, it almost becomes like, in my opinion, and it's not everyone, not every magician or mentalist thinks this, but I think it becomes almost like a moral obligation that from learning these secrets and learning what fools people, why not use my knowledge to help people understand when they're being fooled on purpose, not for entertainment, when they're being fooled for, out of money or against all science and reasoning, things like that will really cause misinformation and harm people eventually. So I think from becoming a mentalist and magician, that's what really guided me to wanting to debunk those kind of things. And it wasn't until like TikTok that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make a video, because a video came up on my page, and it was a girl who was claiming that she was using like science that posting like graphs of things that made absolutely no sense but wasn't real science. But she was saying that if she looks at a spoon and she focuses on it, the particles will speed up. And then like first she showed she couldn't bend it, then she focused on it, and then she could bend it. And I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, because not only was that just like a really poor presentation, usually what happens is like Uri Geller in the 70s, what he would do is instead of just like bending it like that, he would, rub it lightly or visually show it bending, where she just took it and bent it. And I was like, well, I made a video and I was like, well, anyone could do that. If you take a cheap spoon, you can bend it. It's very easy. And then I did it kind of visually and made it happen. And that video did really well. And I thought, oh, well, so you're telling me I can do what I'm passionate about and interested in, and people will like this, because and my magic videos weren't doing that well because I wasn't passionate about it. But this, I was passionate about debunking, showing people when they're being fooled. So then another video came up, and it was someone who took like a crystal, and she claimed there was like energy in the crystal, and it was on her fingertips, and she made, just by focusing on it, the crystal fell off her fingertips. So then I made a video and showed that this is called the ideomotor response. This is how Ouija boards work and pendulums. And if you just think about it, you're going to make tiny movements that are going to cause the crystal to fall. And I just used an M&M to prove that it wasn't, any energy inside. So I did the same thing, and that got like 4 million views. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to keep doing then. Like, this is awesome. I love doing it. And so from then on, TikTok became my main focus, and that is mainly what I kind of blew up on, and what I just kept using. I still use Facebook and Instagram to answer your question. I still use all the other social medias, but TikTok is just what happened to blow up for me, and that's what I use the most.
Okay. I keep telling other skeptics that you need to start doing that. I mean, some of them just use YouTube, and it just doesn't get the play that TikTok does.
Right. And unfortunately, and this is going to be a part of my speech as well in my talk, is that unfortunately, since TikTok is the newest, biggest thing, you have a lot of young people on there, and as well as older people, but you do have you have a young audience, and a lot of them are just super impressionable. And a lot of them, they don't really have the guidance. They don't have the people that are debunking these things. They just watch it. For example, Stranger Things became like a huge phenomenon, and that obviously had a lot of telekinesis in it. And unfortunately,
from the character 11, right?
Yeah. Right. And unfortunately, what started happening is a lot of kids started to use the hashtag telekinesis, which is fine. And they were, they're faking moving things. But then like adults started using it, and people who claim they actually have these abilities, like psychic abilities. And so they're doing it and teaching these kids, like, this is how you start. This is how you do it. It's actually real. It's not just from the movie. And so that started to snowball and blow up even more. And now you just have like a whole generation of kids that like think it is genuinely possible.
So you mentioned several people. Who were your influences in the world of magic besides those you've already mentioned?
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned Darren Brown. He's the mentalist that influenced me. Other than him, James Randi, who was obviously we know James Randi, the magician, the amazing Randi, who was a skeptic and debunked a lot of charlatans over the years. Same with Houdini. Same exact thing. He used his knowledge to debunk psychic powers and abilities. And David Blaine was probably one of my biggest influences with magic. He's what got me kind of interested in it in the first place. And he was one of the first magicians I ever saw on TV. And I loved like the idea of street magic, that it was just happening anywhere at any time. So I guess those are my biggest influences. I am Penn Teller. I should Penn Teller as well. I always don't mention them because I'm like, oh, that's obvious. But
let's talk about your appearance on Fool Us.
Yeah.
Did they know that you were going on the show and were going to act differently than other magicians? And like, no, I
No,
want you to tell everyone how I did these tricks. Did they know
no,
that?
no. So they didn't know anything. The only ones that knew were the producers, and then the kind of like the crew that helped me set up things, and like put things where they needed to go. But the way it works is like Penn and Teller, I never talked with them. I never met with them before I went on. Even when I did, you have to do like a dress rehearsal to prepare. So you actually go onto the stage like a little bit before you do your actual filming, and they have like a not I want to say like a not a fake host, but like a double of, at the time
Yeah.
the host was Allison Hannigan. So they had like someone who looked like Allison Hannigan, and she comes out, and there's Penn and Teller isn't there, it's just the producers, and you just run through the whole thing, and you run through it, you do one thing, and once you're like happy with it and you're like, all right, I'm good to go, then everyone walks away and you wait, and then Penn and Teller both walk down and they sit down in front of you, and you go, and Allison comes out and you go.
So you had
So
never talked to Penn or Teller before this?
no, not at all. I never met them before. I was obviously big fans of them, and a lot of what I do was influenced by them, because I get a lot of, as well as Penn and Teller and me as well, is we both get some hate from magicians. Not all magicians. A lot of magicians should love Penn and Teller. But the reason that some of them get upset with them is that they expose things sometimes. Sometimes in magic. Sometimes they expose what they're doing and they show how things are done. And a lot of magicians get so upset about that. But with me personally, and from learning from Penn and Teller, is sometimes people are more interested in what's going on, and they want to know, not, they don't have to know everything, but they want to know some things. And I think with what I do, it's even more important, because I'm going on stage and I'm literally telling people, I might point to someone in the audience and have them stand up, and I tell them their date of birth, or their first crush, like things that, people could leave and be like,
There's
wait, does he have
no
psychic
way
ability?
he could have known that. There is no
Exactly.
way.
So I feel it's important for me to be like, this isn't real. This is an illusion. This is all for entertainment. But some magicians do get mad at those kind of things. Even when I debunk some like psychics on TikTok, because they're using like magic techniques. So sometimes I have to debunk those and show how it's done. And sometimes, yeah, magicians, they get kind of upset at those kind of things. But I think sometimes it's necessary.
But
And
take a
it's
step back.
important.
How do you get a spot on Fool Us?
Oh yeah, so you have to audition. You send in an audition video, and they like, whenever they're casting, they'll, on Facebook they'll like post a thing that says, now casting, send an email here, an audition. So you send an email, you send a video. I was trying for a few years to get on the show, and it wasn't until I really had a clear idea of what I wanted to do that I said, you know what I've been trying, it's not working. Like, it's just me just going on there doing mind reading and whatever. And there's no real purpose to it. So I said, you know what I want to do is try something that no one has done. And what I want to do is I want to take my love of debunking psychics. And I know Penn and Teller love the same thing, and they love the same idea. So I said, what I'm going to do is I want to go on the show, do these psychic abilities, and I want Penn and Teller to debunk and expose me. I think that
So
would
that
be an
was all your
interesting.
idea. Cool. I wasn't sure
Yeah,
about that.
well, so I also had, some of it was like, most of it was, but then I had, actually, the routine I did was different too in the beginning. The first two tricks that I did on the show were the same the whole time. The third one was different. Then my first idea was having them think of someone in their life, and telepathically, I guess, what this name was that they were thinking of. But the producers were like, well, it was actually really funny. The producers, they were right. Like, it makes sense. The first thing I do is considered telekinesis. The second thing I do would be considered pyrokinesis. So they were like, the third thing, we don't want to be telepathy because we just want another Isis. And I was like, that makes sense. So then I was like, what other psychic thing could I do? And then I came up with chronokinesis, which is like controlling time. But
oh, that was a good one. That was a good one.
yeah,
That
it was
was
a lot of fun.
yeah. So tell everybody what, like, yeah, how you showed that on stage.
The chronokinesis?
Yeah. It was with
Yeah,
a
so
phone. It was with the phone.
the idea with that was having the host Allison name a number. And I think she named 6, 8. I don't remember, but she named a number. And I take out my phone. We look at the time, and let's say, for example, so right now it's 12:37. So let's say she named the number 7. So I show the time is 12:37. I give it to the host, and I say, okay, you name the number 7. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to use chronokinesis to rewind time.
I had never heard of
7.
that term. Did you make that up?
Yeah, I know. What's funny is I don't know who made it up, but it's probably magicians. But Banachek he had a trick where it was like making someone kind of similar. Someone would name a number between like 10 and 20, and he would give them their watch, and the time would like move that amount of minutes. So it's kind of like the same concept and idea, and that's kind of what it was influenced on. But the idea with that is Allison, she had the phone, and let's say, she named 7, and then I go like this, and time visually on the phone rewinds 7 minutes, and then it's not just her phone, it's everyone's phone, in the audience, Penn Teller's phones, and then all the clocks are back.
Yeah,
7 minutes.
don't tell anyone here how you did it, because I want them to watch the video.
Yes. Yeah, and
that got me. I don't understand how you did that.
Yeah, and I think what was really cool is like I told you, I wanted them to expose me, and it was actually my friend Spidey, who's another mentalist and magician. He was talking to me, and he's like, "Why don't you take it a step further? Like, why don't you explicitly tell them that they should just not use code at all? They should just say exactly what you're doing." And I was like, "That's a good idea. I think the producers will really like that." And they did. They were like, they have never done that before, and they loved the concept. So that's what we did. And I was like, it was so funny. They actually cut out a part of it. What happens is I go in the beginning of my routine on the show, I tell them, I want them to expose what I'm doing. Don't use code. Say exactly what I'm doing. So then at the end, when they talk and they're figuring it out. So what actually happened is Penn goes, "Did you mean it?" And I said, like, I didn't know what he meant at first. I thought I was like the whole thing. So I was like the whole, like, me having psychic abilities. And he laughed, and he was like, "No." He's like, "Did you mean it when you said you didn't want us to talk in code?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that part you see on the thing. And I was like, yeah, no, I would love for you to just expose it. And it was just so funny, the way it went. And I could tell they really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And it was just an overall really good experience.
I'm going to put the link to that in the article, because that was really very, very good. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is I found out that you have a $10,000 psychic medium challenge. Has anyone applied to that?
Yes. So I have what's considered, it's the whole supernatural challenge, but I have one kind of specifically for psychic mediums as well. No one has technically attempted the psychic medium one, but I've had 4 people attempt the supernatural one, and those were all 2 of them were people claiming they had telekinesis and they could move, just like I did on Fool Us, actually, where they moved paper under a glass container, but they couldn't do it under my conditions. And then the other 2 were those who claimed they could, it was a trend on TikTok where there's incense and it's lit, and you know how like there's smoke trails when you light incense. So there was this trend where people were claiming, like, it would be like this. The incense obviously naturally kind of squiggles and goes off, but they would like concentrate on it, and it would suddenly just go completely straight. So I started doing videos replicating this and showing exactly how it works and how to do it. And so I did it. And then I started challenging, you know, there are a couple of people who are like, well, you know, I could do it live for 10,000, but then they tried it under my conditions, which was to have 3 incense sticks. I point to which one they make go straight. And they do this 3 times in a row, and then they would win 10,000. They weren't able to do that. And then there's the psychic medium challenge, which I still have. No one has attempted this. There has been one psychic medium on TikTok. Her name is the Bolesky, Amy Bolesky. She's also on YouTube. She's originally said, yes, let's do it. In fact, I didn't even challenge her. She made a video responding to me challenging another psychic, and she was like, I want to do this. Let's do it.
So what's in that envelope is from a friend who passed away, right?
Yes. So this is someone in my life passed away, and just like Houdini, and that's kind of what it was inspired by. Houdini had a passphrase with his wife, and if one of them passed away, the other one would go to a psychic medium, and they would have to get that passphrase, and then they would know that it's legit. So I did the same thing, and this is when the date here, 1/23/2021, is when I started technically this challenge on TikTok. It's not when the passphrase was made, but it's when I sealed it in here and said, this is it. Like, this is, you know, I taped it up and signed it. And so this is here, but with this, the passphrase and the code was made a long time ago. And we made this code, and if one of us passed away, same idea, you would go to a psychic medium, and if the psychic medium figured out this passphrase, we would know that, without a doubt, that that psychic medium is legit. It's a real thing. So obviously I did not pass away. The other person did. And so I have the passphrase inside the envelope, and I offer that challenge to any psychic medium that I challenge. And it's mostly focused on TikTok, but it really could be any psychic medium. And what they have to do is obviously join me. They can either be in person or live, and take a guess and talk to this person in my life and figure out the passphrase. And if they get it, obviously they win the $10,000, and they prove that what they do is legit.
I can shoot for 10,000 right now. So let's
Sure.
Psychic powers are bullshit. Is that what's in there?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately,
I could have really used that
but
money.
it was a good guess. It was a good guess. Definitely a good guess. So yeah, no one, like I was saying, the one psychic medium did accept it, but then fast forward a little bit later, I reached out to her and made a video, and she said, oh, well, I'm booked until next year. So she said, we'll do it next year. Then she just kind of ghosted me, pun intended, and she stopped. She eventually stopped replying completely. Then she made a video that said, like, we felt like it wasn't a legit challenge and that he's lying, so we're not going to do it. And that was it.
People lose their life savings to con artists claiming psychic powers. Are you aware of that whole problem?
Yeah. And a big part of my talk is actually going to be about why it's not just about money, because money is obviously it's important, and obviously that does harm people. Psychics, they want money, and they can scam people and take their, like you said, their life savings. But a lot of it too goes so much further than money into the way that it can harm people. And especially now, one of the ways that psychics are doing this is they're using that to their advantage. They know that a lot of people just don't trust psychics if they want money, right? They're starting to, a lot of people are starting to understand that, like, you know, oh, it's a scam if they want money. So a lot of psychics now, especially on social media, are saying, oh, I don't charge for readings. I don't charge for readings. They'll do shows and appearances and things like that, and they'll do it over they'll do it over social media, like video to video, but they're like, oh, I don't charge though. So they are using that to say, like, so what we're doing isn't wrong. I don't even charge people. But in reality, what's happening is they are using that leverage of, like, getting people to believe in these things and going massively viral. There's a psychic on TikTok. She has, I think, now over 7 million followers, and her name's Kelsey Davies. And most of her followers are young children. There's a young audience. And she, I've challenged her before, and she was like, "Oh, well, I don't even take money from people." But realistically, what's happening is she's getting a ton of money from becoming social media famous. She's doing brand deals, and just like anyone else who would become social media
If she
famous.
hasn't yet,
So
she can write, become an author and write books, which, make money too.
she basically, psychics are now finding out, well, we can do this in another way. We can use clout and attention from social media. We can make money without technically stealing it from people, even though a lot of these people send in tips and donations and things like that through their TikTok lives and things like that. And also same with like, for example, John Edwards, sorry, he on TikTok, he goes live, and he does the same thing. He doesn't charge, but he asks for donations, and when they tip, he gives readings. Anyways, the whole thing for me, and this is a big part of convincing people that, like, why I wrote an article about Uri Geller, and because he recently had an article written about him in the New York Times.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. The End of the Magic World's 50-Year Grudge is the name of the article.
Yes. So I wrote a counter article to that was published on like a magician's article website blog type thing called One Ahead. And it was basically me saying, well, this article was absolutely ridiculous. It was written by an amateur magician who he posts on, like, magicians, we're all part of like magician groups and stuff on Facebook. So he posts all the time, like asking for advice, and he just it's a hobby for him. So he also happens to publish for the New York Times. So he published this whole thing and basically trying to speak for all magicians and saying, oh, well, what Uri Geller did wasn't harmful.
Let me read this quote. One line from there is, watching the Geller haters now is like watching people run into nursery school shouting, "There is no Santa Claus."
Yeah, which is, and I make a lot of points in my article about like why it is harmful, why it is definitely the grudge is not over, and a lot of the points he made were just either completely false or wrong. For example, there's a part in there where he says Uri Geller never got into faith healing. He never claimed that he was healing people, and in my article I literally link on Uri Geller's own website. He talks about the power of healing through faith, but like not Christian faith. It's like his version of faith, and how he has helped cure cancer and blindness. So I literally linked that, and I was like, well, obviously this guy didn't even do much research because it's on his own website. But what really saddens me about this is, even I've argued with a lot of magicians, because there are magicians that are just like, oh, what he's doing is fine, he's just bending spoons. But they don't understand that what he's doing now is not just bending spoons. He is obsessed with publicity to the point where he, on his website, he'll post regularly and on social media just like crazy conspiracy things. And one of them is, he talks about aliens, he talks about reptilian species, and he just like really promotes these conspiracy ideas. And it's sad that this recently happened, but it also brings to light why these conspiracy propaganda ideas are so harmful. I don't know if you heard about it, but very recently there was a father who had, I think it was 2 children. I think it was 2. It was either 2 or 3. But he and the mother were both really deeply involved in these conspiracy ideas that there were reptilians out there. And this was very recent. It was like probably last month. But the father kidnapped the children and took them across the states. Like he went far away, and he claimed that his children had reptilian DNA.
Oh, I do remember this. I thought it was longer ago than that, but oh my God, that was so sad.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I
so
found out about it through like the news and TikTok and stuff, that it recently, or I don't know how long ago it was, but it was, the dad basically murdered his children with a harpoon gun, and all because he claimed they had reptilian DNA. And the mom was involved with this as well. She didn't do it, but she believed in this conspiracy as well. And that to me just shows, like, right there, that is proof of the idea that these conspiracies can really just form like a psychosis with people, and they can really, especially if they already have some type of mental, issues, it can really start to consume them to the point where they can do things like that are truly harmful. So that's where I look at someone like Uri Geller and I'm like, how can you live with yourself doing things like that?
All right, well, let's close with a little conversation about CSICon and conferences. Have you been to other skeptical conferences or CSICon for that matter? This is your first.
This will be my first.
Wow.
So I'm really excited.
You're going to be in for an interesting experience then. My first time was, wow, all these people are skeptical, and no one's religious here. You can talk about your religious deconversion without being the center of attention, because everyone has. It's like,
that will be refreshing. That's exciting.
Just amazing to me. Have you seen the speaker list? Anyone you're particularly looking forward to meeting?
I hope to God that I don't believe that I can meet Bill Nye, because he is like, I joked once I found out he was going, I was like, he practically raised me in school. Like he was every time a teacher would roll out the TV and you knew that it was like you heard Bill Nye's theme on, I was like, let's go. Like this is the most exciting day of my life. So I would love to meet Bill Nye. I think Bill Nye is amazing.
Absolutely good shot at that. So I interviewed Bill 2 days ago, and the article was published yesterday. And as I mentioned in my write-up, I met him for the first time in 2018. He was just a conference attendee. He wasn't even on the speaker list. He sat down at our table in the book reading room and just had conversations with anyone who would come up to him. He's the most approachable person.
That's good to hear.
It's quite astounding. He doesn't love selfies, I'll tell you that.
No, and neither do I. So that's totally okay.
He loves talking to people.
Cool. That's good to hear.
Okay, so with that, we can call it a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life in Vegas.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm so excited.